Welcome to Earl Stewart on Cars.
Fleet sales are kind of like the dirty little secret of the industry. So the manufacturers are kind of a necessary evil. Illegitimate fleet companies exist. They don't really use the cars as they say they are, and they do it just so they can get the lower price. And the price, by the way, can be thousands of dollars less than the normal retail buyer will pay. As a matter of fact, the fleet companies can buy cars for less than the dealer pays. So you have to ask yourself, why would a manufacturer want to sell cars that cheap? The manufacturers have a huge amount of money invested in their plant and their equipment. The overhead cost is gigantic to General Motors or Chrysler or Ford or even Toyota. A lot of the auto workers are union, and if demand drops, you still have to pay the workers. Sometimes you have to pay them just as much as you pay if you weren't building cars. If you close your plant down and slow your plant down, your fixed costs remain very, very high. So the manufacturers will do almost anything to keep the plants going. And one of the ways to keep the plants going is to sell cars to fleets real cheap. Oftentimes the manufacturers miss their forecast. So what do? They call Hertz, Avis, National, the huge fleet accounts, and say, listen, I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse. I'll sell you 10,000 Fords for $2,000 less each than you could buy them from a Ford dealer. So the fleets will step up and buy these cars. The bad part about that is to you, the consumer, because when you sell cars a lot cheaper than normal, what happens? You bring the value of the car down. When you bring the value of the car down, the depreciation on the car you just bought goes up. So if you bought a Ford Taurus and then a fleet just bought 10,000 of them, that's going to devalue your car. And if you look at the statistics on this, you will find that the cars with the greatest depreciation, Chrysler, General Motors, are also the companies that have the greatest amount of fleet sales. Hundreds of thousands of cars are sold as fleets every year. And a lot of times the sales figures that you read of the number of cars that were sold by a particular manufacturer, a lot of times a big chunk of those cars were actually sold fleet. They call them fleet tail, a hybrid between retail and fleet. They call it fleet tail, and they allow the dealers to sell this fleet business. They allow them to call it retail for the purpose of incentive money. And so your retail figures that you see reported by all the big manufacturers oftentimes are inflated. I think that's deception. I think you're fooling your stockholders, you're fooling your buyers, your customers, into thinking that you're selling a lot more cars than you are, because when you sell these fleet cars, you're not making any money, and oftentimes you're losing money. This is a scandal that needs to be reported on a national basis. Phony fleet buyers will buy cars from the dealer. Remember, they can't buy the car from the manufacturer. You buy it through the dealer. And then the purchaser, the phony fleet company, they can sell the cars to the public, or they can export them. South Florida, this is rampant. We're an export headquarters. Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Jacksonville. Cars are exported, all over the world from Florida. So individuals, they'll get a phony fleet company, ABC leasing company, and they'll get a license. They'll get a motor vehicle license, and anybody can get one. I mean, you go through a little check, but you get one. And then you go up to a dealer and you say, listen, I want to buy 1,000 Dodge Darts. That's Chrysler does big fleet business, so they go to Arrigo Dodge and they buy 1,000 Dodge Darts. It's substantially less than you or any retail buyer can buy it, and probably below the dealer's cost, by the way, below what Arrigo can pay for it. And then this phony leasing company takes them down to the Port Everglades, puts them on a boat and ships them to Panama and sells them down there. And they got the advantage of buying the car below dealer cost. And the only reason Chrysler did it is because they got to keep their plants cranking. And they might have lost money on those cars themselves. Meanwhile, the phony fleet buyer makes a huge profit by shipping the cars to Panama or Venezuela, or for that matter, they can ship them to China, anywhere in the world.